Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is going to be session 5 of 47, and it has been an amazing first day already. Well, pre-con day, actually, I should say, because the first official day is tomorrow. So this has been an excellent pre-con day for Dare to Be Great 3, Dare to Be Great 2021 virtual conference, and I'm excited for this session. Our next speaker here is Samantha Hawkins, and she's out of Cobb County 911 out of Georgia. And the session is 10 things your 911 caller wish you understood. Take it away, my friend.
All right, all right. Hey, it is so great to be here with y'all. Let me just say, first of all, the bar has been set way high. Zach, Meg, Amy, all of y'all, bosses, amazing sessions. So I'm in amazing company to be able to do this, and I'm glad to share this presentation with y'all for the first time. So I will appreciate your feedback, everything. Let me know, okay? So the session is 10 things your 911 caller wish you understood. It's a little bit of a twist on we always get the presentations, we always teach. I'm part of the community education team for my center. And so we always teach things like we go to the schools, we go to the nursing homes, we say, oh, when you call 911, this is what's expected of you. This is what your 911 call taker or dispatcher needs to know. This is, the things that, hey, so bear these things in mind when you call us because this is the information we need. This is what we're looking for. So this is a twist on that. This is for us, right? This is for our people. 911 dispatchers, call takers, those of us who are answering those phones, 911, the admin lines, this is us on the other end, bearing in mind things that our 911 caller might want us to understand when we get them on the phone. So let's take it away. So quick intro here, just to let y'all know about me. Going to keep this short and sweet. Again, my name is Samantha Hawkins, but everybody calls me Sam. All right. Sam, I've been with Cobb County 911 for 6 years now. 6 years. I have a customer service background. So I started way back when cashiering in the days of Publix. That was my thing. And flash forward to now, here I am, 911 dispatcher, call taker. But I've actually wrote an article about this in the Journal of Emergency Dispatch where I credited my prior customer service experience because really customer service is a big thing of what we do. And those of us in this career, we know it. Customer service is huge of what we do. So I came to public safety out of desire just to help people, just pretty much. I didn't expect, I never thought, hey, I'm going to be a 911 dispatcher when I grew up. There's a little poll down there. There's something important to that poll. So y'all make sure you check that poll out because at the end of this, I'm going to have something to say and you'll see why I put that poll up. I didn't expect to be a 911 call taker. All I knew was I wanted to help people, so I ended up here. I'm on the community education team. Go out there, we talk about, hey, why you call 911, how you call 911, all that good stuff. And I'm a fairly new member to our peer support team as well. Now, anyone who knows anything about peer support know that peer support is like Fight Club. Number one rule of peer support, we don't talk about what happens in peer support. But I'm a fairly new member to that, and I love it. People say to me all the time, hey, Sam, what do you expect to be doing, in a year from now, a few years from now? I expect to be doing this, just a little bit more added on top. I love 911. So first thing we're going to dig into, we're going to talk about why we're having this session in the first place. And the idea is putting empathy back into call taking. All day long, we're listening to calls, right? This is what we do. We listen to our callers. We're hearing them out. Hearing, right? They're talking to us. They're telling us their problems, this, that. You say, well, this is what we do, and this is. But it's sometimes we can get to a point where you're just listening, but the empathy isn't there, right? You're just hearing your caller, you're putting in, you're typing in, you're doing all the technical stuff, which the technical work is a big part of our job, right? We do that. You type, whatever, you put in, you stick to the facts, everything. But there's also that other side, right? There is the being empathetic, being sympathetic, actually listening, and active listening. That's what we're going to talk about quickly. So I have up here this quote by Khalil Gibran, poet, artist, visual artist, probably heard of. This is big time philosopher and everything. He had a lot of quotes about listening and talking to people, and we actually quote him a lot when we talk about communication and everything because of quotes like this. This one I have up. The reality of the other person is not in what he reveals to you, but in what he cannot reveal to you. Therefore, if you would understand him, listen not to what he says, but rather what he does not say. Okay. So what does that mean? Listening to what your caller doesn't say. How do we apply that to 911? Okay. Well, this is how it works. We're not talking about putting words in your caller's mouth. We're not talking about speculating. We're not talking about prejudging or painting a picture already in your head, right? No. We're talking about twofold listening. I'm hearing the words that my callers speak, right? We ask questions. We put those down. Hey, what's the address where you're at? Where are you at right now to meet with officers? Are there any weapons? Different things. But it's also hearing the things they don't say, right? Nonverbal body language, tone of voice, vocal cues. Did you ask them a question and you could tell the way they answered that question that it was like, sound like there was some doubt there. I asked them a question and, I would expect they would have been sure. If I said, hey, does anyone there have any weapons? And they answer something back like, no, she doesn't have any weapons. Okay. Well, did that really answer my question? Did he necessarily answer if he doesn't have any weapons? I've taken calls like that. And I've clarified, hey, do you have any weapons though? Well, yeah, I have one. It's in my car though. I'm, it's outside. Where are you at? Well, I'm by my car, but I'm not inside my car. Active listening, hearing what they say, and maybe sometimes what they don't say, and recognizing when you need to clarify. Now, this is important to this session because everything from here on out is based off of this. Listening and reacting to what we're hearing, reacting appropriately. Because what? We are the trained professionals. It's what we do, right? So, empathic listening is active listening. It's deeper, supportive, and reflective listening. It's asking questions, right? They tell me something, I heard them, I recognize that I heard them. I'll say something like, okay, I heard you said this, is that correct? Okay, well, let me ask you this, right? That's listening to another level. It's listening to what is and is not being said. And that is, again, tone of voice, emotional state, nonverbal language. Things that we don't see them. We can't see their body movements. We don't see the sweat that might be beading up on their face. But it's hearing the things in between the lines that maybe they didn't say it, but I noticed the inflection in their voice. I noticed this, right? Now, some of you might think, well, this is getting a little deep, but the fact is, this is what you'll do. We do this on a daily basis, all the times, especially with more experience. And as we grow as call takers, as dispatchers, we're used to hearing and we know our callers. We notice things. We notice, hey, they didn't exactly answer my question. Or I noticed when I answered my question, they seemed a little, and then we put that on the call, right? Hey, the individual said this, but I think I heard someone said something in the background about this, right? So everything from here on out starts with that. Active listening, deeper listening, not just hearing you, but actually listening to what you're saying. So this is the first thing. This is number one on the list of things that your 911 caller wish you understood. This might be my first time calling 911 for help, so please be patient with me. This is a biggie. I probably could have just did an entire session on that one thing there. So here it is. Patience and kindness goes a much longer way than frustration. I get frustrated too. Okay, I'm not sitting here in this seat pretending like, hey, I've got it all figured out. I've only been doing this job for 6 years. All right, I've got a lot to learn. All right, so it's very easy sometimes to have that reaction. We're taking a call from someone, and then you get off that phone. You're like, oh my gosh, they were a terrible 911 caller. Terrible. Well, what made them a terrible 911 caller? Right? Because are we assuming that they've called 911 before, so they should just know how, the questions that, we ask? Here's a fact. Here's a fun fact about me. before I took this job in 911, I actually had only called 911 twice, only two times. Okay, two times, and both of them. Well, actually, one of them was about at the light. My mother and I were in the car, and it was just we couldn't stop. But there was a vehicle in front of us in the intersection, and we're like, "Oh my gosh, driver's not moving. He's just sitting there." He was just sitting straight up, not slumped over, but straight up. We're like, okay, well, either he probably fell asleep or something. So I called 911 about that, okay? And it was a straightforward call, simple, gave the info and everything. I could reflect back on that, and I don't know if you could grade me as a 911 call taker. I probably wouldn't ace it. I think when I did that, when I called in, I'm just thinking in my okay, I'm just gonna give the information, blah blah blah, whatever I remembered. Thankfully, the call taker was a Cobb County call taker. She was patient with me. She got it, everything. She entered in whatever. I didn't answer in order. I just went through. Hey, hey, hey. She's like, okay, good, awesome. But here's the thing: there are people who has never called 911 before. Okay, there are people who calls 911, and we are getting them for the very first time. They don't know what to expect, okay? They don't know what questions we're going to ask them, and they don't even know the order that we're going to ask the questions in. So what is our job, right? Our job is to guide them through these questions and help them, right? With clarifying questions. Again, you ask your caller something, right? And they answer it, but they only answer it partly. Or they don't answer at all. I've had, medical calls where I'm like, is the person awake? They've got their eyes open. Okay. But is the person awake, right? Now, it's sometimes, it's easy to get frustrated when like, oh, they didn't answer my question. They didn't answer my question. Well, that's why we take the time and we guide them, right? We're like, okay, I hear you. But I just want to confirm, just want to verify, is the person awake? That's what we do. And we do this all the time. And it's easy to get frustrated. I take calls and you slam it down. You're like, wow. But we have to bear that in mind, that people don't necessarily know, like, how to place a 911 call correctly. Thankfully, we've got community education teams, right? Thankfully, we've got people all the time. Before I joined the education team, I saw presentations, I saw sessions where I watched 911 dispatchers who broke it down, right? They go out there to do town hall meetings, and we talk about hey, when you call 911, this is how it goes and everything. And we're seeing even more of that, and it's amazing. More people are getting educated about how to be, if you place a 911 call, what is expected of you. And they're teaching their kids this, okay? I get kids that call in, and you can tell they have been taught. They're listening and everything. And we already know the kids already make some excellent 911 callers. But I'm seeing more of this, of people educated on how to take 911 calls. But not everyone is. So our job is to guide them, be patient with them, be kind with them. Steer them away from dwelling on information that's not helpful. When they start talking about back in 2003, such and such a thing happened, and you're like, I just need you to tell me what's happening now. That's when we ask those clarifying questions, right? That's when we ask questions to get them back on track of, okay, hold on. All right, I hear that. But right now, let's get back to here. Tell me what happened 5 minutes ago, okay? Let's get back to this. Let's get back on track. So number 2, when I dial 911, I'm expecting that I will reach a competent, trustworthy, and knowledgeable call taker. So this is in our caller's mind, right? When they call us, some of us think that we are the absolute boss, which we are, because 911 rocks. But they call, and their expectation is that y'all know everything, right? Y'all are going to do everything, whatever, you know where I'm at. You're pinging me, whatever. They got, CSI, NCIS, whatever on the brain. They're like, y'all know everything, right? Their expectations of us, though, sometimes exceeds, a lot of times, exceeds what we actually do, right? They have this idea of, this is the service you provide. I have a problem. No matter what that problem is, you're going to solve it. Because that's, right? I dial 911, 911 fixes my problem, right? That's how it works. So many 911 callers believe they are speaking to actual police officers. And this is, I say 911 callers, this is alarm companies as well. I can't tell you how many times I get a call from an alarm company and they're like, thank you so much, officer. Have a good day. I'm just like, okay, well, that's new. I'm a communication officer, not exactly a police officer, but and that's coming from an alarm company. But we get callers all the time. I've taken calls, and they're like, "Hey, I think I see you. Is that you waving at me? Is that you coming down in the squad car?" No, it's not me. I'm just dispatch. But if you see the officer, that's them. They're for you. Okay, so we are the first responders. We know this, right? We have a duty to provide pre-arrival care and life-saving instructions. So we're not going to meet all of our callers' expectations. We get that right out there. Right? We know they have high expectations of us. However, it is those high expectations that do call us to that level because they don't understand all that we do, but they do know. A lot of them do understand that we represent some sector of public safety, right? So they're thinking in their minds, when I call, I'm getting somebody that is going to help me out. Maybe I can't I can't provide the answer like right then and there they need, but I can help them out, right? By directing them or putting them on the track of what they need. That's like the person who, their electricity goes out. They call us, right? They call 911 because that's what you do. You call 911. 911 can solve that, right? And so, yeah, of course, I'm like, well, I can't do that. That's a power company problem. But I don't have to get frustrated, right? I don't have to react to them and be like, are you serious? Really? Your power's out. The first thing you thought was to call 911. Problem. No, I can put them on the right track and say, okay, hey, I can't help you out. As a matter of fact, maybe I'm aware. A lot of times we get aware because by that time we're getting calls in. Maybe, there was power outage right outside of our center, right? So we're aware that, hey, there's a storm, there's power outage. This is a problem. I can't help you with that. But what I can do is I can, put you on the right track. Have you called your power company? You haven't? Give them a call, So ensuring trust in public safety is everything. What we don't want to do is we don't want to have the kind of reaction where they dial 911, and we snap at them, right? Or we make them feel, maybe not snap at them, but you kind of give them the vibes like, maybe I was an idiot for calling. All right, no, maybe, okay, they weren't thinking, they were just like, I'm just going to dial 911. And that's why we educate them, right? Again, we guide them, we put them on track of who you need to call. But we don't want to lose trust with our citizens, right? We don't want them to think, man, the last time I called 911, yeah, they made me feel like I was an absolute moron. So now I have a situation that arises where I should call 911, but I'm still thinking about the last time and the last call taker that snapped at me. Right? We don't want to do that, right? So ensuring public trust is huge. It's very important. Our callers expect our services to be timely, efficient, and reliable because, again, in their minds, I dialed 911. 911 is going to get help out there to me as quickly as possible. There's a reason why we don't give ETAs, right? Most centers, we don't give ETAs because we can't. We don't know where the officer's coming from. There's always a chance that a priority call comes up and then all of a sudden that officer gets pulled off and they're going to that call. We don't give ETAs, but we can do our best to assure our caller that, right, hey, help is on the way, or we are going to get first available units, first available help out there to you as soon as possible. Your caller expects us to know what we are doing. Even if they don't even have a clear idea of what it is that we do, they expect that when they dial 911, we know, hey, you should know whatever it is, you know the answers to. So again, this is stuff that you want to just keep in mind, bear in mind. You can take the route and you can get frustrated. You could be like, really, you thought that I could solve that because they put mustard on your hot dog and you don't like mustard. Okay, no. We can't solve that, right? We can't. But sometimes your caller just wants to vent. Sometimes they just want to vent. And sometimes they just want somebody to say, hey, I absolutely get why you feel the way you feel. Unfortunately, I can't, maybe I can't send, an officer out there to help you with this. Is there anything else I can do for you? Or is there something else? Sometimes I've had callers call and they just through the roof, you would have thought like, oh my, something's happening. And they really just wanted to talk it out, whatever, get it off their chest. Guess what? When that call ended, they're still thinking, man, 911 is cool. 911 still solves it. We didn't send anybody out, right? But we didn't lose trust. We didn't snap at them. We didn't reveal our frustration that they're calling us about something that we can't do. We heard them out. We let them talk it out. And yes, if it's something we can't send an officer to, then it's like, hey, unfortunately, I can't send an officer to you, right? Another example, quick example, is lockouts. At my center, if someone says, hey, I locked my keys in my car, it's not running, there's no children or animals inside, we have to refer them to, hey, I'm sorry, you have to call a locksmith, right? If I'm already giving them I'm going to answer them with, I can't send an officer out there to you. I really don't have to have an attitude when I do. I really don't have to be like, I can't help you. Click. No, I can, hey, I'm sorry. Hey, that's unfortunate, whatever. But I'm not able to send an officer out to you. Actually, fire, they're the ones who handle. It's not a fire hazard. There's no children or animals inside. I can't. I'm sorry. There's nothing wrong with saying you're sorry. You can say you're sorry to your caller. Even if you're just doing your job, you're not apologizing. You're not saying, man, I'm sorry that this is such a bad policy. No, you're just saying, hey, I'm sorry that I can't help you. In this instance, I can't help you with this. But I'm sorry, you need to call a locksmith. Maybe they didn't even think of calling a locksmith because they called 911 because we're supposed to handle everything, right? So now you're like, hey, call a locksmith. This is what you can do. So our callers, they have high expectations of us. And yes, again, we can't meet all of those high expectations, but you want to bear that in mind, that they're thinking when they dial, they might be getting a police officer. They're getting someone who just knows all the answers. We don't know all the answers, but we don't want to lose trust in our citizens, or we don't want to leave that bitter taste in their mouth that they don't call us again, when they do need us, because of how we reacted to them. Number 3, I'm not the professional here, so don't be surprised if I don't behave like one. This is a simple truth. Our 911 callers, right? They didn't go to school like we did, right? They didn't go through the training. They didn't get the skills. They didn't get all of that knowledge, all of that we got of how to remain calm, composed, how to stay, no matter what chaos is ensuing, we keep it together, right? It's what we do. Again, we're great. But we can't expect that from our callers. So when they call us, right, because they're in the middle of some situation and it is full on hysterics, right? Stop expecting us, like the way we are, the efficiency that we have as 911 call takers and dispatchers. Don't expect that from your callers. A lot of times they don't give it because, again, they're not skilled professionals like we are. They're not trained like we are. So when a situation gets, it's out of control, whatever, they get out of control, okay? You have weeks, months, years of classroom training under your belt. You've got experience. You've been doing this job for 6 years. You've been doing this job for 17, 12 years, 20 years. You've taken the calls, right? You've taken bad calls, all types of calls. You know how to stay calm under pressure. Your caller doesn't have your training, okay? They didn't go to the same courses you did about how to remain calm in stressful situations. So keep that in mind. Expect that you're going to have to be the calm and they're crazy. That illustration we've got there, that's you. That little pendulum, that little ball, that is us. That is us keeping it together. We're just rocking on, right? Rocking steady. And that's your 911 callers. They're going bonkers. They're like, I don't know what to do, whatever. Hey, they're screaming on the phones, whatever. That's why we don't scream with them, right? They're screaming. We don't start screaming. They start shouting. We don't do the shouting match. We don't do that, right? We don't go back and forth. I when I started this job, I realized there were so many different like approaches to if you have that caller who's like absolutely just hysterical and yelling on the phone. And one of my favorite ones was someone that I sat and observed with for a while. She's actually not with our agency anymore. She actually is the director at a neighboring 911 center. And I sat with her for a long time. And her technique for it was they're yelling and everything. And she would just look at me and she'll say, you know what I'm going to do? Nothing. I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to go absolutely silent. And what would happen is they're just going on and on and on. And then at some point, they realize, like, okay, I'm just talking and I don't hear the call taker saying anything. And they go, hello, are you there? And she say, yeah, I'm here. Do you hear what I'm saying? Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but you're yelling. So I hear yelling. I can't make out what you're saying. I want to put this call in. I just don't know. I still don't know where you're at or anything. And at some point, they just start to wind down. And that was her approach. And she told me back then, she said, it's never effective to yell over your callers. They're going to yell and you're going to yell and you're just yelling over each other. No, no, that will get you nowhere. All right. So that's an approach, but you don't even have to do that technique. Either way, the thing is, as they're going crazy and they're hysterical and it's just chaos, and they're not whatever, you've got to be the calm. You can't let yes, in the back of your mind, they may even be using foul language. They might be using all sorts of things. Still, you've got to remain you. And after that call is over, know in your mind, like, hey, that was them doing them. Okay? What I said in the beginning, think about that. This might be their first 911 call ever, right? They didn't go to school. They may not know, hey, this is how I'm supposed to handle. All they know is that I'm in the middle of this situation. My 92-year-old grandmother is on the floor. I just walked in on this. She's on the floor. I don't even know if she's breathing or not, whatever. They're going crazy, right? Because that's what they're going to do. That's what 911 callers will do sometimes. We have to be the calm to their crazy. Got to be like that little ball, we're that polished little ball right there. So while they're going on and on, we're going to steer you right back on track. All right. Number 4, if I sound frustrated, please don't take it personally. I'm probably more frustrated at myself than anyone else. That connects to the last one. Our 911 callers, part of, you take a call and you get off and you're replaying in your head things they might have said and this, and you're a moron. You didn't send help out quick enough, all this stuff, right? So check out this graphic. This is the average 911 caller's emotional state. We're looking at Emmy award-winning hysterics, Pulitzer Prize-winning dramatics, and full-on frustration at the world. Like, in that moment, they're like, I absolutely hate everybody everywhere. But they don't really hate you, right? All that anger, all that frustration, all of that, it isn't because they really think you're a moron or you're bad at your job or you didn't send help out quick enough, right? It's really them speaking out of this feeling of hopelessness or helplessness that I don't know what to do. Use the prior example. My 92-year-old grandmother is on the floor. I walk in on this. I just come home and this is what I see. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. So when they they dial 911 and we get them, and all we're doing is just trying to, hey, can you, I got your address. Would you mind verifying your cross street or, verify your phone number? And they're like, what? You're asking me a whole bunch of questions. What type of dispatcher are you? All this stuff, right? Don't take it personal. It's not that you're not doing your job, and it's not even that they necessarily don't think you're doing their job, right? In that moment, it's them speaking out of this feeling of helplessness. I need help. I need help from my grandmother. And right now, I don't want to answer any questions, whatever. I just need somebody to tell me what to do. So what do? Well, if there's questions that need answering, right, we still get them answered. We try to get our caller, right, that crazy, We remain the calm to their crazy, try to get them back on track, right? Like, hey, I understand, whatever. I know you feel, but I assure you, I am getting help started. I just need to verify this, right? In case we get disconnected, I need to make sure I have the right callback number for you, right? I have to ask you questions about her. I know you just said her eyes are open or whatever, but I need to know, is she awake? Is she breathing, right? We guide them right back on track. Your 911 caller who has never met you before and doesn't even know you, they don't know who you are. They don't really hate your guts. It is a fact. It is a fact. They don't hate you. They have no reason to hate you. But in that moment where it seems like they're hating everything around them and hating you, it's just keep in mind where they're at emotionally, okay? Where they're at emotionally is that I am helpless. I don't know what to do. I need someone to tell me what to do. That's where they're at. That's why I've taken calls like this. And some of you, dispatchers, call takers, you probably have some stories to relate to as well, where I've had callers call back in, and either they said, "Hey, I put in this call an hour ago. I put this call in a week ago, whatever," and they asked for a supervisor to say, "I'm trying to reach that call taker," and I've had people, say, Hey, I know I was kind of hysterical. I'm the one who called a week ago about, the medical call. I was going crazy. I just want you to know that you did a great job. You did an excellent job, and the things I said I didn't mean. That's also happened rather recently. I had a complaint come in where someone basically reported that I wasn't I like, oh, I'd been rude to them, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And my supervisor had the same reaction. He was like, are you sure that? So anyway, they went through the whole process, of course, and listened to it. And, during that time, like the person like just put the call in and they were like, I expect a call back, whatever. Supervisor like, God, yes, we'll make sure and they did the whole process, passed up the chain. They called the person back, basically let them know, hey, we finished our investigation. And they were going to say, hey, we finished our investigation and we didn't find anything. When they called the individual back, she was like, actually, yeah, I can tell you right now, I was the rude one. Like I was going out of my mind, whatever. This is what happens, right? Because this is what sometimes 911 callers do. So don't take it personal. We don't take it personal. We move it on. Keep it going, right? Like we're going to move on to the next one. Number 5. I know you're only trying to help, but you're not here. You don't see what I'm seeing. That's a perfect illustration of what your caller probably thinks when you're telling them to do stuff, and they're like, "But do you see what I'm seeing? What are you, Ray Charles?" Okay, so your 911 caller doesn't. They don't see the minor laceration, right? If you ask them, hey, what's going on? They call medical. They're like, hey, this person just stabbed themselves. Really? What happened, right? And you're getting all the questions. You find out it's like they had a butter knife or whatever, and kind of, dragged it across their skin, whatever. And they're like, but they don't see, they don't see it in the facts. Sometimes they see this bigger, more dramatic picture. So what really is a minor laceration, they see it as it's a gaping wound, right? Oh my gosh, they just stabbed. You should see all the blood. Fire gets out there, they're like, radio. It's good. Like we put a bandage on it. It's fine. But this is, I've asked caller, one of the questions we ask, those, use emergency medical dispatch, EMD, and it asks the question as, is the bleeding serious, right? You know how many times I had callers like, yeah, it's serious. It's totally serious, right? It's a hemorrhage. Fire gets on scene, radio, we got this. It's good. But that's just the difference. So when we get callers, right, who call in, they say, hey, I would like to report somebody in my neighborhood is got an AK-47. You're like, sure, yeah, it's an AK-47, totally rapid gunfire. I can assure you. And of course, officers go out there and they determine it's fireworks radio. So that caller calls back. What we're going to do, right? We're not going to argue with them. We're not going to go back and forth. They're like, I'm pretty sure it was an AK-47 or it was a machine gun runner. No, our job is to help the caller distinguish sometimes between what is real, what isn't real, myths and facts. So I'm not going to go back and forth. I'm not going to say, well, I'm telling you right now, whatever, if what you think is an AK-47 isn't an AK-47. You need to go look at some YouTube videos. Apparently you got it wrong. No, but we will tell them, like if they call back, hey, yeah, officers checked that area. It wasn't a gun. It was definitely fireworks. It's definitely fireworks. So that's our job. That's our job. We help our callers to steer between fact and fiction. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to argue with our caller and tell them what they're seeing. Because in that moment, if they're telling me, hey, it's a gaping wound, it's whatever, I'm going to deal with that. I'm not going to go ahead and think in my head that they're wrong. It's not any of that. And no, we respond according to what our callers say, right? Even though we probably, might take little bets in the center, like, hey, who thinks it's gonna be a minor cut, right? But the fact is that what I put on that call, right? And when I enter it in and I dispatch it out, I'm going to dispatch it according to what my caller's saying. And while I've got them on the line, I'm not going to be going back and forth. Are you sure it's a gun you're hearing? Could it be fireworks? I might ask them if it's fireworks. If they say, no, it's not fireworks, I'm not going to go back. Yeah, but are you sure? Doesn't sound right. I really don't believe it's an AK-47 someone has in your neighborhood. No, we're not going to go back and forth. Going to hear them out, right? We're just going to be like, okay, put the call in. We'll get officers out there to check, right? So in that situation, in this scenario, that mind you, we're not in, because I'm just taking the call. I'm taking the call, I'm processing it, but I'm behind the computer screen, I'm on the other end of the phone. I'm not seeing what they're seeing. So it always is going to appear worse in their eyes. They're always going to see like madness, chaos, pandemonium. That's what they're going to see. It's very easy for me to be on the other end of the phone and to say, okay, I can hear what's going on and everything, and I can sort of say, okay, this is not all that, it's not all that. And that's fun. That's what we do. We work through the facts. But again, we're not trying to force on the caller for them to, we're not trying to make them feel like an idiot, right? We're not trying to make them feel like a moron, right? We're not going to be like, nope, you're absolutely wrong. Just help them. We ask, here again, clarifying questions, right? Questions that will help guide them, help them to even get a clearer understanding of what's happening. Okay, like, all right, well, maybe, actually, now that I think about it, it is the 4th of July. maybe it is fireworks. And then sometimes I'll get a caller who says, you know what, it might be fireworks or it might be a gun. I'm still going to get an officer out there to check that area, right? Because they're not sure. So not going back and forth with your caller, but through questions, through the protocol, everything, and how you ask the questions and everything, we help them sometimes to help figure out fact from fiction. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes it takes an officer actually responding out there, and the officer takes it upon themselves to kind of guide the caller. They meet with the caller like, hey, nah, sorry, there was no AK-47 in your neighborhood. Number 6, I didn't dial 911 to be judged or dismissed. If I'm asking for help, please listen to what I have to say. So, the basic premise of this is that every caller wants to be heard, right? Every caller wants to feel like their call matters. They took the time to dial 911. They said, hey, I'm gonna dial 911. I'm gonna get somebody on the phone that's gonna get me help. They might be having a situation that's not a 911 emergency, right? But it doesn't just, diminish the fact that in their mind, it is an emergency, whatever it is. The hot dog that has mustard on it, and they don't eat mustard, whatever. So they called 911. And again, it may be a situation where I can't dispatch officers to this, or I'm not dispatching officers to this. Doesn't mean I can't hear my caller out. I can't listen to them, because at the end of the day, they're more than a call stat, right? They're more than a call stat. We don't have quotas in our center. There isn't this, hey, you've got to take X number, of calls. We don't do that, right? We take calls as it come in. Our job is this. Hey, if you're sitting there, you're on phones, you're on relief, then you're in ready, right? Calls come in, you're taking calls. If you're a dispatcher, you're on a radio, the radio's not that busy, and you hear phones ringing, you answer calls, right? So it's not a competition, it's not a race, it's not a numbers game. It just boils down to I'm just trying to take, calls, this X amount of calls. No, we're not. We're trying to answer calls, and we're trying to answer them proficiently and efficiently and provide some sort of answers to our callers. So if they're having an emergency and they want to vent about whatever, and you're like, well, this is not something I necessarily can help them with, maybe you can put them on the track again of, hey, this is who you need to call. Hey, this sounds like a code enforcement issue. You might know in your heart, like, police isn't going out for this. No. But ask them, hey, have you contacted your HOA? Have you contacted code enforcement? That might be what they need to hear, right? Your caller is more than a stat, again, and they're not another sob story, okay? It's easy sometimes, you're on the phone, and, you've got it in your ear, and you just want to be like, no. Your caller it's not another story, right? Listen to your caller, hear them. I know you're like, some callers make it very hard. Some callers make it hard to just sit there and listen, active listening. But even the frequent flyers will call in, and in the middle of all the calls about whatever, I saw this in my neighborhood, whatever, they'll even call and have an actual call that you need to dispatch on. We had a frequent flyer one day. He calls every day, like about 3 times a day. Not on the 911 line, he calls on the admin line, so he dials the 10 digits. And he reports the same thing, hey, they're playing Devil's Worship music, whatever, right? But every so often, that same guy, he will call in, and it will be an actual legitimate call. Like one time he called, he was like, and you're thinking in your head, I already know what's going on. And he's like, hey, there was an accident that happened right outside my door. It was a bad accident. We're like, okay, we set out, it was a bad accident. A bad accident. We was like, wow. How did it just so happen? And then like after he gave that, he's like, oh, and by the way, across the street, they're playing the Devil's Worship music. But really, yeah, bad accident. Make sure you'll handle that. All right. So every caller wants to be heard. They just want to have their say, right? We're not any better. We're not better than our callers because we're on this side, because we've got a badge that says 911, right? We're not better than them. We're ordinary people too, who also like to be heard, right? We want to be heard. We want to have our say too. And there's situations that might arise that, guess what? Someone might look and be like, hey, that's not an emergency. That's not a big deal, but it's a big deal to us. So understand that with your caller. Hear what your caller is saying. Don't hear their zip code, right? Don't hear where they're calling from. They're calling from that mobile home park that always has stuff happening, right? We don't hear that. We don't hear their background. I'm not hearing that I have prior calls, whatever, where they called about this, but today they're reporting this. Hear what your caller, right now, in the present, what are they reporting? What emergency are they having right now? And deal accordingly. Number 7, if I tell you I have reservations about police, be empathetic. I might have my reasons. It's a big one. It's a big one. And of course, this is one that especially applies to minorities calling into 911, which I'm a minority, okay? So here's a truth. I'm just going to lay out a couple of truths, right? Truth number 1, racial bias is alive and well in 2021, as much as it was alive and well in 2020, 2019, going back, right? So, and the fact is that racial bias, racial discrimination, it pervades all sectors of society. So it's not really a surprise that, of course, it also is something that impacts our criminal justice system, right? There are many Black and brown people, this is truth number 2, there are many Black and brown people, citizens, who are going to be reluctant about dialing 911, right? Because in their minds, they're going to think that, hey, if I call for police out here, it's going to escalate the situation. Whether or not their actual, perception or their beliefs is based on anything that's happened, they might not have ever experienced racial bias in their life or discrimination, right? But they're like, well, I've seen this news story or I've seen this. So this is something to bear in mind when you get calls from, yes, black or brown 911 callers, right? Or any, foreigners, whenever something to bear in mind. It might have taken a lot of debate, a lot of internal debate for them to even decide to dial 911. It could be a situation that's just so bad that they said, you know what, in spite of my fears or whatever, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna dial 911 and I'll get an officer out here because it's just so bad that I think we need help. We need law enforcement. So if you get callers like that, if you get a caller on the line who expresses, something like, "Hey, yeah, I need police out here," which we get calls like that. I need police out here. I don't really trust the police. I don't really trust the police. And the first reaction, I've heard it from other call takers, dispatchers. I've thought it myself initially is, okay, so you don't trust us, but you're calling out there. So this is something that I bear in mind myself, because even being a minority, and I absolutely understand where they're coming from or understand why they might feel the way they feel, but I'm also in public safety, so there's also that big side of me that I'm like, well, but you're obviously calling for, on us. You're calling for help because you recognize that, hey, we're the good guys here, right? But you got to bear in mind that it might have taken a lot for them to call. Don't dismiss it. Don't dismiss it. Our job is not to get on the phone, and we're not trying to defend the actions of an officer in another county, in another state, another agency, another department. It's not my job. It's not. I'm not going to get into a back and forth with the caller about, well, we're the good people, we're the good guys. What are you afraid of? Like, why? What? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that, because realistically, either they could have experienced something in their past, they could have a relative, or they could have a friend that's had, a bad history with an officer or something, or with law enforcement, or with the criminal justice system, right? Because they will lump that all into one. It may not have been something they've experienced, from the hands of an officer. It could be they felt let down, or they feel like a relative or a friend has been let down by the criminal justice system. But they just lump it all into one: police, the courts, prison, all that, right? So the only thing that my job is if I get a caller on the line, they say something like that. Well, I just saw a news story and I'm afraid and I don't really trust. Ma'am, this is what I have said. Ma'am, I can't speak about that news story. I can't speak to any of that. That's not my department, not my agency. That happened in a different state. Only thing I can speak to is that I'm putting the call in for dispatch, and I'm sending my available officers, my first available officers out there. And I can assure you of this is not a false promise, right? Listen to this. I'm on a recorded line, right? So I'm not going to make them false promises, or I'm not going to say something that later on, no, I'm going to say this, and this is the truth. I can assure you that I'm putting this call in, and that my goal is for you to get help. And I can assure you that my officers who I'm sending out there, it's their job as well. Their priority is for you to get help in this situation. That's it. Well, I heard about this and this happened, and no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to go back. I've heard call takers, though, they get emotional, right? They get emotional because they've got friends in law enforcement, or they've worked in public safety. They're dispatchers, so we work alongside law enforcement, right? So they get passionate and they want to go back and forth. I don't know why you feel the way you feel, and they're talking to caller and whatever and everything. And you have to understand the whole story and the big. No, we're not doing any of that. No. Again, we're gonna steer the caller away. We're not gonna get on the news stories or what happened miles away from us. We're gonna stay in the present and in the now. I'm not going to dismiss what my caller is saying. If they're telling me I have reasons for distrusting the police, I'm not going to argue back and say, well, why don't you trust them? Right? I'm just going to stick to the now and make the assurance that I am putting the call in for dispatch. And I am sending officers whose job it is to help you. That is our job. That is our goal. Right? Bring your caller back to the present. Bring them to here. What is relevant? What is relevant is that they need help. I'm sending help out there to you. Number 8, I could be your relative, your friend, your neighbor. Would you talk to them like you're talking to me now? All right, folks. Golden rules of 911. This is it. Number 1. This is the first rule. Treat your 911 caller with the same decency and respect that you give to a member of your family or to a friend. That's just basic courtesy, folks. Basic politeness. If I've heard, and I've been guilty of this too. You know, you take a call from a 911 caller, and maybe you's in the middle of something, and you're like, you just feel like they interrupted you. It's like you temporarily forgot that you're there to answer calls, but you're like having a conversation with your best friend over here who's in the same pod with you, and you're like, "What? The phone rang?" And then you're just like going at it you're just rushing through with the caller, like, "Yeah, whatever, okay, yeah, got it, yeah, got it." In. Then you get back to okay. So what were you saying? You're back with your best friend. What were you saying? What? Okay. Hey. Golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, right? The same way, if you dial 911 for whatever reason, if you had a reason to dial 911, you would expect that your 911 call taker is giving you utmost attention, listening to you, focusing on you, not already trying to like, how long has this call been? Because I really am trying to get back to this conversation with my friend here, right? Treat your 911 caller with that same amount of decency. The same you would apply to your mother, to your father, to your friend, right? If you're having a conversation with them, the same way you're focused in and you're lasered, you're listening to them, listen to your caller. Don't rush your caller off the phone. Please don't. Please don't. Hey, I'm talking to myself here. Don't rush your caller off the phone, right? Listen to them. Number 2, imagine if the caller was your loved one dialing 911 for the first time. Again, hey, maybe they've never called 911 before, and maybe it's your mother who has to dial 911 for whatever reason this first time. How would you want the call taker to deal with them? How would you want the call taker to speak to your mom? One of the best compliments I've ever received was someone said to me one time, "Hey, if I ever had to dial 911, I really wish you would be the one to pick up." That's awesome. That's awesome. That tells me, hey, you want to have that, again, the same way you would want a 911 call taker, dispatcher, to deal with your mother, your grandmother, your father, right? Be that call taker. Be that dispatcher, right? Don't be the dispatcher, the call taker that happens to leave that bitter taste in someone's mouth. Don't do that. And they're like, I don't know if I'll ever call 911 again. Don't do that. You don't want to be that. Third rule. Love this. If you wouldn't say it to your grandmother, don't say it to your callers. Unless your grandmother happens to be Betty White, might be a little different, because Betty White, she's like the ultimate grandmother. But for the most part, hey, as a general third rule, just, again, mind what you're saying. Mind your words, please, with your callers. Number 9, you don't have to know me to understand me. 911 spells empathy in action. Your caller might be a total stranger, but that doesn't stop you from being able to connect with them on an emotional level. Full circle, folks. We're right back to empathy, where we started at. Now, empathy versus sympathy. What's the difference? All right, so sympathy, right? That's general. Most people can be sympathetic, right? If someone lost a relative, right, and you say, man, you give them a sympathy card. You're like, I'm so sorry for the loss of this relative, right? It's you and that's it. It's feeling sorry for someone, or you're trying to understand someone else's feelings from their angle, right? So you may not have ever lost someone yourself, but you're just saying, hey, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that you lost someone. And I'm seeing you. I can see how broken hearted you are, how devastated you are. I get it. You lost this relative, you lost this loved one. So I'm sorry, right? That's sympathy. But empathy is something else. Empathy is actually putting yourself into that person's shoes, right? It's actually seeing it. So it's almost as if If that person lost, an uncle, right? It's more than just saying, hey, I'm so sorry you lost an uncle. But it's actually like, almost putting yourself in that frame of reference. Like, man, what if I lost my uncle? Jeez, right? It's deeper. It's to another level, right? So why empathy is so important is because we take calls all day long from people who they're spelling out situations and they're detailing, hey, this happened, whatever, and you might have never ever, you know, been in a situation even close to that, or you might be just sitting back like, whoa, that's a mess, right? Right? But more than we don't just approach our callers or our calls as simply, hey, I'm sorry that you're going through that. That's kind of crazy. But more than that, we actually put ourselves, right, in their shoes. We're like, wow, I'm hearing you. If I'm taking a medical call from someone, I don't have to see what they're seeing, but I'm gonna put myself in their frame of reference and I'm going to understand, hey, this is why they're freaking out. I would be freaking out too if this happened. Or I'd be absolutely hysterical if I walked in, and I found, you know, again, my 92-year-old grandmother on the floor, right? So this is when, right? It's like I said, deeper than listening, right? That's what empathy does. It's more than just, hey, I hear what you're saying and I'm sorry you're in this position, but it's actually seeing it as best as you can from your caller's point of view and trying to really grasp what they're going through in that situation, right? Number 10, your voice could be the first kind voice I've heard in a while. This is the last thing I ask that you bear in mind uh, when you take a call from someone, right? So it's a Proverbs here. Proverbs 16, verse 24, chapter 16, 24. It says, kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul. We're wrapping up here, folks. Look, everything boils down to kindness, listening, and kindness. Treat every caller like it's your job to help them have a better day. Maybe they just need a reason to smile that day. We get a lot of callers like that. They're just having a really bad day. You don't, if they're already having a bad day, I'm not going to try to make it worse. I'm not going to, I don't want to have, be that call taker that I'm letting my own problems or whatever, bleed into the job and I come off rough with my caller or cold or indifferent. It doesn't hurt to have a smile in your voice for your caller because you might be the only person for that entire day to speak kindly to them. Or it may not just be that day. It could be weeks, could be months, could be years since they've had anyone to show some kindness to them. So it's not only what you say, it's how you say it, right? The same way I said in the beginning about how we're listening to our caller and we hear what they're not saying because we're listening to vocal cues and we're hearing their tone of voice. They hear ours as well, right? So they hear our sighs. They hear us go, so where are you at? Like, they hear that, right? They hear our tone of voice. They hear our inflection. They can tell if we're frustrated. You may say, well, I'm not really frustrated, my caller. I'm having a frustrating day. That can happen. I get it for whatever reason. But on that phone call with your caller, that's not, they don't know. They don't know, right? And you don't want to take that out on them. They take it out on us, right? But again, they're not the trained professionals. We are, okay? So they can hear our sarcasm. They can hear our frustration. And how we respond to them can make all the difference in the world of how they respond to us. So you don't want that. So closing off here, right? Why? So what? What does all this boil down to, right? This is what it boils down to. So that little poll we had up here, right? We had some votes. And I see here, I see 6 votes for a 911 dispatcher. Absolutely applaud y'all. I want to know who said that, okay? But we got 4 votes for a Power Ranger. Okay, that was me, all right? It was like a Power Ranger or like there was like other things, but Power Ranger was definitely high up there. But we got all these votes, 101 votes so far for or anything else. So why did I ask that in the poll? The reason why It's because most people didn't say when when you were 6 or 7 years old and someone said, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" We weren't saying, "I want to be a 911 dispatcher." Here we are. You could have been anything you wanted to be in this world, just about anything. But this is where you're at. This is what you chose to do. And even if it took you by surprise, like with me, it took me by surprise that I'm even here, but I'm still here 6 years later, right? And you're here 10 years later, 12 years later, whatever. 2 years later, okay? The burnout time at our agency is like 2 years. So if you're here 3 years, we're like, way to go. You could have been anything you wanted to be, but you chose to be this. You chose to be awesome. You could be doing something else, making the same amount of money or a little bit more, and not have people's lives in your hand. But you chose this. So all of this boils down to you're already awesome. I just want us all to keep being awesome and doing awesome things. We want to be the reason why someone calls 911 and says, "Hey, man, that was better than I thought." Right? Some people they call for the first time. They're like, "Wow, I thought this was going to be so hard. That call taker was so awesome, so amazing." Right? I want us to keep representing this profession with excellence because it's an excellent job and we're excellent for even doing it. So with that, see here. Let's see here what I got here. Yeah, there you go. Thank you guys. Thank y'all for having me. It was amazing, really amazing. And thank y'all for listening.
Hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That was really, really good. Well done. And I love the picture here at the end as well. That speaks to me. I love that movie. That is awesome. Thank you so very much. I was excited to especially when I saw this come in. I was like, this has got to be one of the sessions for DTBG3. So it was awesome to have you. There were no questions that were in here into that spot. However, the comments, there was so much that everybody was talking about.
I had all of these down. Now I'm looking at it. I was like, no, I can't see because I would have been looking and y'all would have been like getting me. I would have been smiling and laughing. And I was like, no, I'm not going to look. I'm not going to look. Hey, this is my first time ever presenting this. First time ever even doing anything like this. So, hey, I take the feedback as well. Y'all, a lot of y'all know how to reach me. If you don't know how to reach me, I'll say how, whatever. But tell me, hey, I will take the feedback. Let me know what y'all think because hey, anything I can fine tune, I will fine tune it. But I had fun, right? I had fun. A lot of fun with y'all guys.
This was really good. And for those who are watching as well, Samantha is also in the Discord channel. So if you guys want to go back there, you can check out some stuff and any questions that you might have or presentation or anything, it'll be there in that channel. So. Again, thank you. It was superb.
Thank you.
Awesome. So for everyone here, we got our next session that's going to be coming up at 1:45 p.m. Eastern time, and that'll be with A. Wesley Jones, and he will be doing Lost in the Comm Center, Lessons in Leadership. So we will see you in that one, and we'll be back soon.
Bye.